2,000 years ago, someone built a working computer. Then the world forgot how for more than 1,000 years. You're at the Odd Observatory. Let's take a closer look. Easter, 1900. Greek sponge divers shelter from a storm by the island of Antikythera. And beneath them, 45 meters down, they find a 2,000-year-old shipwreck full of bronze statues. One diver surfaces in panic, babbling about a heap of dead naked people on the sea floor. They were statues, mostly. Among the treasure hauled up was one corroded lump of bronze the size of a shoebox. Nobody looked at it twice. It would turn out to be the single most anachronistic object ever found. The ship was a floating showroom, fine glassware, jewelry, coins, and over 50 bronze and marble statues. Greek luxury, probably bound for Rome. Recovering it took nearly a year in canvas suits and brass helmets. The world's first major underwater excavation. It cost one diver his life and left two more paralyzed. For months, the lump sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, catalogued as miscellaneous wreckage. Then it cracked open as it dried, and inside, a museum worker saw something impossible: a gear wheel. Precision-cut bronze teeth, inscriptions in ancient Greek, traces of dials. Understand the problem? Fine gear trains like this don't appear in the historical record for another 1,000+ years in medieval astronomical clocks. This was like finding a jet engine in a pharaoh's tomb. Most scholars quietly decided it must be something simpler, an astrolabe, or dropped onto the wreck centuries later. One man disagreed. In 1902, archaeologist Valerios Stais said it plainly: "This is an astronomical machine." He was overruled. Greeks did philosophy. The thinking went. Not precision machinery. The lump waited 50 years for someone to take it seriously. 1951. British physicist turned historian Derek de Solla Price begins 2 decades of work on the fragments. X-rays reveal the truth hiding under the corrosion. Not one gear, at least 30, nested in an intricate train. Price counts teeth. One gear has 127 of them, an oddly specific number. Then you learn the astronomy. 254 lunar months, almost exactly equal 19 solar years, and 127 is exactly half of 254. Whoever built this had encoded the moon's dance with the sun, a relationship Babylonian astronomers had tracked for centuries, into bronze. In 1974, Price published his verdict, Gears from the Greeks, and called the mechanism the oldest surviving relic of scientific technology. Many historians still couldn't accept what that implied. That should have settled it. It didn't. So, a science museum curator, Michael Wright, spent years inside the fragments with a homemade tomography rig. Then did what no skeptic could argue with. He hand-built a working reconstruction. Gear by gear, 2005, a team of scientists brings an 8-ton CT scanner to Athens because the fragments are too fragile to ever leave. The scans see through 2,000 years of corrosion and find thousands of hidden Greek characters etched inside. A user's manual engraved on the machine itself. I am and remember, everything we know comes from just 82 corroded fragments. A third of the machine, maybe less. The rest is still missing. The lump had a name for what it was all along. It was an instruction. Read me. But tracking the sky was the easy part. Here's what it did next. This machine didn't just map the heavens. It predicted the future. And one dial quietly admits its makers knew that prediction could fail. Turn the hand crank and the mechanism becomes a clockwork cosmos. A front dial, the sun and moon moving through the zodiac. A silver ball showing the moon's phase. A back dial, the 19-year calendar cycle that keeps lunar months aligned with solar years. And below it, the Saros dial. Crank far enough and the machine tells you the month an eclipse will strike. The glyphs even hint at eclipse color and winds. That part's astrology. Folklore etched into the bronze, clearly labeled. They went further. Eclipse cycles drift 8 hours with each repeat. So a tiny subdial tracks a 54-year triple cycle and corrects the time of day. A correction on the correction. There's a small dial tracking the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. This machine scheduled both eclipses and sports. The front plates carried a parapegma, a star calendar engraved around the dial, telling you which stars rose and set as the year turned. An almanac built into the faceplate. Now the flaw and the genius. The moon doesn't move at constant speed. It speeds up and slows down along its elliptical orbit. The Greeks knew from Hipparchus' work that their moon math wobbled, so the builders mounted one gear on another, off-center, with a pin riding in a slot, a mechanical trick that makes the moon marker speed up and slow down, mimicking the real anomaly. Let that land. An elliptical orbit correction built in bronze more than a century before Christ, modeling an irregularity that wouldn't be explained until Kepler, 17 centuries later. They couldn't say why the moon wobbled. They built the wobble anyway. There may have been more. Inscriptions record planetary cycles. Venus to a period of 462 years, and a 2021 model reconstructs a full planetarium on the front face. The display is hypothesis. The engraved numbers are fact. And every tooth of every gear was cut by hand. Triangular teeth a millimeter or two across, filed into bronze plate by lamplight. No machine tools existed. This was the machine tool. Who built it? The mechanism's calendar uses the month names of Corinthian colonies, and one of them evokes it above all, Syracuse, the city of Archimedes. Cicero wrote that Archimedes had built a bronze sphere that modeled the whole moving heavens. The dates are stranger still. One analysis of the eclipse tables suggests they were calibrated to begin in 205 BC, plos Alistair, meaning the design may be more than a century older than the shipwreck that carried it. We can't name the maker. Anyone who claims to is selling folklore. But the mechanism was probably not the first of its kind. The workmanship is too confident. This was a mature technology. Follow the ship's route. It sailed from the Greek east toward Rome, past Rhodes, home of Posidonius's school, and of Hipparchus himself, the man whose moon math is encoded in the gears, which raises the real mystery. Where are the others? Here's the quiet answer. Bronze was money. Broken machines were melted into coins, weapons, statues. Almost no complex bronze object survived antiquity, unless it was lost somewhere no one could reach. The only workshop tradition we know of ended, and the knowledge thinned out generation by generation, until gear-driven astronomy had to be reinvented. In medieval Islamic astrolabes, then European cathedral clocks, the Antikythera Mechanism survived precisely because it was lost. The sea that killed the ship embalmed the evidence. A century of study, and fragments are still being decoded. In 2021, researchers published a full working model of the front gearing, built only from what the CT scans prove was there, and the wreck isn't finished talking. Since 2012, divers have been going back with modern equipment, recovering statue pieces, hull timbers, von Hull Termved, and in 2016, the remains of a crew member the ship took down with it. History even shows us how the flame gutters out. First century Alexandria had a working steam engine, Hero's spinning sphere. It became a temple novelty. Technology doesn't march forward. It waits for a world that wants it. Here's the observation to take with you. Primitive ancients is the biggest myth in history. Knowledge isn't a staircase that only goes up. It's a flame, and sometimes, for centuries at a time, it goes out. Every civilization believes its knowledge is permanent. A corroded shoebox in an Athens museum says otherwise. Somewhere under the Mediterranean, the rest of that flame may still be waiting. The 1900 wreck has never been fully excavated. The observatory logs something strange every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next observation.